Hey, coaches. So today we are going to be talking about deepening the exploration of agenda setting. And there are three main points that we're going to look at. The first one is maybe the one that will feel the most frustrating, but hopefully freeing as well. One of the things that in coach training that I and anyone else in coach training will hear often is this pushback from coaches who feel restricted by the structures of coach training. There are coaches that really prefer the sense that you are just following the client's lead, that you are just there in the moment. You're able to fully leverage yourself and their present awareness, what they want to talk about, the situation. You're just able to be right there with them and taking time to walk through these 5 steps to set the agenda or to make sure that your entire session follows a certain pattern or format. It feels restrictive and it feels like it doesn't serve the client very well. There's truth to that. But the reason in the first half of the training of corporate sponsored coach training, the reason we look at structures is those structures help us peel away the unnecessary pieces around agenda setting and other things within coaching. However, as we move into the second phase of coaching and coach training, we do want to begin dropping things like the START model of agenda setting, because a model, a structure, will cause coaches, if they seek to follow that structure too closely, it will cause coaches to break the full, deep partnering connection with their client. START, that's the training wheels. That model, it's the training wheels of agenda setting. And now we want to begin moving away from the training wheels, needing those, and just focusing on the needs of the session, the needs of the client. In order for a coach to have a deep, meaningful conversation with the client needs to have voiced or be figuring out how to voice what they believe, what they feel, what they think they want to focus on, why it's so important, what they want by the end of the session, and what subtopics need to be addressed. I mean, we know that from the START model. That is the START model of agenda setting. But it does not need to go in a step-by-step order. The client, in checking in on how things went the last week, may be talking about the significance of the transformation they are seeing in their lives through the coaching and how they want to carry that transformation forward. And the coach may only just highlight and confirm that it sounds like you would like this to be the focus of our agenda and that it's so meaningful, probably after an acknowledgement, using the client's language, highlighting that the client's already voiced some of this stuff, and maybe the client says, yeah, exactly. I just want to keep drilling down into this. Okay, so now as we talk about this topic again, this transformation you're experiencing again, where would you like to end up by the end of this session? So we might offer that template-ish question, but it would be in many ways the first agenda setting question that we're offering, because we are acknowledging what the client has brought to the table and just saying in our heads, oh, they filled that cup of meaning already. Let me just highlight it and move on to whatever's needed most next. Maybe they're overwhelmed as they bring themselves to the table. And the coach just simply starts with, wow, out of everything going through your mind right now, what is most valuable for us to focus on today? Using their language, highlighting their energy, highlighting the fact that even you as a coach feel like, wow, I can't quite get my hands around this. So in that way, perhaps the coach's first question, the first interaction, the input from the coach is to ask the areas to address question. But it shouldn't sound like the coach is just ticking that box. As we move away from the START model of agenda setting, we do need to see 3 cups being filled. You have the general topic that's going to show up. Either the coach is going to ask for it or the client's going to bring it. And as that shows up, The coach knows that the client needs to have the 3 cups filled, or is through the coaching session going to be filling that cup. So we ask questions about meaning, about depth. We ask questions about where does this go? And as things are heavy and big, we ask narrowing questions about what's at stake, what's most valuable for our time. But beyond this day, this session, your agenda setting questions need to sound much less like the template and much more like the client. And that is one of the greatest distinctions between beginners and professionals in the coaching field. That the agenda setting, which starts everything, the energy, the flow, the entire process is founded on the agenda setting. If the agenda setting starts with using the client's language in asking those questions, highlighting the client's energy around transformation, meaning, areas to address, direction, results, outcomes of the session, as those questions sound more like the client, the entire session will be more like the client. But the only way we can do that is to have an instinct that we are developing as coaches to fill the cups instead of tick the boxes. It is a long-term challenge, and not every session is going to work out perfectly. In fact, if a client says, I'm not sure what to do, where to go first, well, that's the second thing. So the first thing in this video is be willing to walk away from the checklist of the START model. Make those instinctual over time. The second thing is to be comfortable with the ambiguity of a more abstract agenda, knowing that in the coaching session, you may help them better understand what they want out of coaching around that topic. That might be the result they're pursuing. So as a coach, you may recognize they have an inability to voice what part of this they should focus on, where they would like to be, what kind of resolution they might like by the end of the session. They might not even be able to fully articulate why this is so important, but they know there's something there and they just need to talk it through. Perfect. In these agenda settings, instead of continuing to ask the next thing, we must, as growing coaches, recognize those moments of ambiguity and offer, in my opinion, some direct communication observation that provides guidance and deferring of the agenda. So the client comes in and says, I've got this thing on my heart. I know I need to talk today about my relationship with my skip level boss and how I feel about where things are going with my work. I don't know if I can even say why this is on my mind today. I just feel something is there. I need to talk it out. Wonderful. Well, normally as a coach, I would ask you some questions about what you want from this conversation. But the way you're talking here sounds like we can start by unpacking this for a while, and maybe halfway through our conversation, maybe earlier, we'll check back in, and then we can talk about what you really want out of the rest of the conversation at that point. How does that sound to you as a possible direction for our session today? The ability for the coach to offer a longer space for just drilling down on the meaning of the agenda, or drilling down on the results of the agenda, drilling down on the areas of the agenda, just saying, how about we come back to that? And coming back to that after some time. The idea of coming back to the agenda and seeking to better answer those questions later, in some ways becomes the measure of success, the measurable result of the session. So I want to encourage you. You will, and you have probably already seen those types of agendas come up. So in those types of conversations, defer the agenda setting, but make sure to return to it. Because if you fail to ask, where is this going after having explored for 20, 30 minutes the meaning of this topic for the client, then if you never return to that agenda setting, then you are going to be determining how much deeper we should dig. You need to check in with a client on their clarity, their awareness, their readiness to take this a particular direction. Don't make the assumption that you know when to ask the question. You need to check back in and say, hey, how much clarity do you feel you're getting around this topic now that we're 20 minutes in? Where would you like to take this conversation by the end of our time here? Or are you ready to voice the core meaning of this conversation that we're having right now? Defer if needed with the agenda setting. So be willing to walk away from the START model, the training wheels. Be willing to explore an ambiguous agenda over time and check back in on the cups that need to be filled. Now, thirdly, as a coach, you need to be willing to challenge the small agenda. Small agendas are those that we as coaches, we might feel a little bit more comfortable with. They often are the problem-solving agendas, the ones where the client just wants a plan. They want to get the decision. They need to know the thing that needs to be said in a conversation. Whatever it might be, you might have a sense, man, it sounds so small. It sounds like they almost already know the right answer here. It sounds like this is too little of a thing to focus on. In those moments, as a coach, you are paid as a coach to challenge an overly transactional coaching agenda. A couple of ways you might do that. An easy way, as part of the agenda setting, you might say, hey, if I could, I'd like to wave a magic wand and say, in an hour, you have that. You have the decision, you have the plan, you have whatever that is, you've got it. If you did, what more would you need to feel successful, to feel like this is going the right direction, to feel prepared, whatever the topic is? Wave the magic wand. In an hour, you've got what you want. What now? What difference would it make? What would you need to work on most? What more would you need in order to make the most of the opportunity? How can you go? What would you need to do to go from just solving this one thing to growing and seeing some life transformation through this opportunity, and so on? The wave a magic wand question is often used with coaches, but I think this is a good place to use it when it's an overly small transactional conversation. Say, wave the magic wand, you've got that thing. Now what? That's one way to challenge. But the other way is far more direct, to get permission, because you are going to be challenging them directly. So if I could have your permission to challenge the agenda that you're bringing to the table. As you're talking, I'm reminded of all the work you've done in the past, all the change you've seen in your life. And I can't shake this feeling that this is very small. This is a very small deal for you to work on today. And I wanted to check in with you what you see. Or I want to check in with you on what's really important for us to focus on today. Or what makes this small deal, in my opinion, the small deal, such an important part for us to focus on today. And so on. So, and acknowledge that, so that's just what I'm seeing and the thoughts that are going through my mind, the questions that are going through my mind. I'd like to hear your side of what you want out of this session, or I want to hear what you think of this challenge, of this observation. You can check in the agenda setting when you see it's small, when you see it's transactional, and say, hey, I think we could go deeper. I think you could grow far more through this conversation if we drill down to what's really at stake here. Those challenges are welcome in coaching. And if the agenda setting starts off with a small agenda and with something transactional, the whole rest of the session is going to be transactional almost always. You want to make sure the foundation of the session is deep enough for the client so that they get the most out of the experience. This isn't to say that the coach demands a deeper agenda, but the coach ought to challenge an overly transactional agenda for the sake of the client and their longer term transformation. You can especially take that idea of challenge and tie it back to the big agenda and say, hey, you're bringing this agenda here today, and I can't help but shake this sense that this wouldn't really help you get that long-term outcome that you said that you wanted from our coaching relationship. What are your thoughts? And in that way, you're facilitating the client of today having a conversation with the client who set up the coaching agreement at the beginning. These challenges are part of establishing the full coaching agreement. So as you seek to deepen your agenda setting, be willing to walk away from the checklist to start, seeking to fill those cups naturally with the client's language. Be open to exploring the ambiguity of an ambiguous topic, and then checking in on the agenda setting markers later, filling those cups later in the conversation, and be willing to challenge the small in order to help the client experience transformation instead of transactional problem solving. There's a lot here to cover. I'd encourage you to consider one of these areas that you can most work on now and return back to this idea of deepening the agenda setting as we go. We'll be practicing agenda setting in our session together so that we can learn from each other in our styles, how to also bring our client's language in deepening the agenda, regardless of what agenda it is, challenging the small, bringing it to big, and so on. Thank you so much for being a part of this journey, for continuing to grow as a coach, and continue to serve your clients well.